Welcome to More Than a Lawyer with your host, attorney Christy Crow. This is a podcast that highlights the amazing acts of service that lawyers perform all over the country. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, www.jinxcrow.com. Now here's the host of More Than a Lawyer, Christy Crow.
Welcome back to More Than a Lawyer. We're so excited to have with us today AshLeigh Dunham. AshLeigh is a lawyer in Alabama, so the same state that I'm in, and I'm so excited to have you here with us today. Welcome to the show, AshLeigh.
Thank you for having me.
As you know, we talk a lot on this show about things that lawyers do outside the practice of law, but because your law practice intersects with your life outside the practice of law so much, I'm going to talk a little more about what you do inside the practice of law today. So tell us what Magic City Fertility Law is and how you got interested in fertility law.
So I help people make families. I like to tell everybody I am a recovering divorce attorney because I litigated divorces for 15 years. And I started having physical manifestations of stress from my job. So litigating about domestic violence, those types of things, my neck, I started getting, I had a bulging disc from how stressful it was.
I
And
believe it.
I mean, it is because you're holding your shoulders up all the time like this. And so about the time that my husband and I got married, we were together for about 10 years before we got married. And he likes to make the joke, you don't marry a divorce attorney lightly. So I was like, I get it, honey. So we ended up getting married, and then we tried to start a family. And I was litigating all day, some of the most stressful, emotionally charged cases. And, the outcomes for whether or not you get to keep your kids or your retirement, that's a big deal. And it was a lot of stress. And we started trying to have a family in the middle of being so stressed about that. And so we went through 5 years of fertility treatment, 5 years of trying to get our daughter, where I was litigating during the day, going to a IUI, which is an intrauterine insemination, and then coming back to finish litigating a case. And it was so much. And so because of that, because we had to go through 2 IVF cycles in our state and got 0 embryos, and my doctor said to me, I think you need a bigger lab, and you're probably going to have to leave the state to do that because we have so many restrictions here. I realized at that point there was such a need and there were other people that were going through what I was going through. So to get to your question, what is fertility law? I handle making families with embryo donation, egg donation, sperm donation, and surrogacy.
Oh, wow. So I never really thought about the lawyer's role in that. So if someone is having trouble getting pregnant or having trouble with fertility, what exactly would you do? You match them with people that might be donors for different parts of that process, or what?
So there's so many different paths. So when you are having issues, you go to your doctor first, and you try to do it the cheap way. I always tell everybody, we just try to do it with timed intercourse and having a couple of pills that help things along. But sometimes they realize that maybe the sperm isn't great, maybe the eggs aren't great, and so at that point, either the doctor can match you up with someone by saying, like, we have this donor clinic or donor bank outside of the state. Or they can say, go to this agency. There's a lot of agencies, not any in Alabama. There's quite a few in Georgia that will match people. And then people will go on Facebook or social media, or even just asking their friends, like, hey, would you carry a baby for me? I mean, it's one of the most altruistic, beautiful things that people could do for each other.
I'm sure it is very altruistic and beautiful on the one hand, but there are also a lot of legal issues that could come from that, I can see. So what kind of legal issues do people have to navigate when they're going through that process, assuming the old-fashioned way doesn't work and just taking a couple pills doesn't work? What kind of legal hurdles might someone see and have to navigate?
So let me tell you, my contracts, after doing this for many, many years, they're so long. They're about 55 pages plus, an additional 20 pages when you're dealing with surrogacy. If it's just an egg donation, sperm donation, you're looking at like maybe 18 pages. But you have to think about, if it's a sperm donation, They can't use, if they're in another state, they cannot use marijuana. They cannot use any type of drugs while they're going to, before they donate. They sometimes need to ice down there. When it comes to women, like, don't drink alcohol immediately before donation. If it's surrogacy, you have to look at vaccines, hair dye, anything dealing with that an OBGYN would tell you not to do, making sure that you are healthy, going through communicable disease testing, making sure that you're not in a domestic violence relationship. These are all huge things that need to be negotiated before you trust someone to babysit your child for 9 to 10 months.
Wow, I just never really thought through the issues that someone might be needing to address on the front end of that. And so you got out of divorce law, got into fertility law based on your own, once you saw the needs for your own, after your own journey. And how is that? I mean, is there a big need for that?
Yes, I am so busy. I mean, there's only there's about 5 attorneys who handle this in our state, just our state. And so 2 of them, one kind of dabbles. She's mainly a divorce attorney as well. Another one is basically retired. So there's 3 of us who handle them almost on a daily basis. I think I probably have 3 or 4 cases coming in every single day dealing with drafting a contract or reviewing a contract, because under the American Society for Reproductive Medicine, which used to be located in Vestavia until we shut down IVF in our state and made IVF basically unconstitutional in our state, used to be in Vestavia, Alabama, and they moved out of our state. But they have guidelines that say you have to go through psychological testing ahead of time. So nobody's going to try to keep a baby that's not theirs, and you're going to go pick up that baby and not leave it with your surrogate. And then following the psychologicals, you have to have medical testing to make sure that the person is actually able to do what they're promising to do, which, you never know if that's actually going to come to fruition or not. And then both sides have to be represented throughout the entire process by independent counsel on both sides.
So do you have to then help the surrogate find an attorney to represent her? Or are there you said there are 3 folks in the state of Alabama. Is this a well-developed area of law in other states?
So it is, Alabama and Georgia, we're basically the same. So we're over here winging it based on, our contract law and our parentage statute. So Alabama and Georgia pretty much operating the same way, but other states do have statutes on it, especially places like New York. They're very protective of their surrogates. Florida has some statutes on it as well, but they're getting a little iffy on some stuff. But that is how Florida is. So, but we do. I usually will refer all of my clients. I'll say, hey, if you want me to draft it, I suggest calling one of these 2 other attorneys if you want a review attorney in Alabama. Now, a lot of times the intended parents or the surrogate may be in another state. Most of the time they'll use a surrogate in Alabama, and the intended parents will be either international, so Canada, China, France. It just varies. A lot of people come from Israel, and so there are a ton of people that are coming to our state. We use Alabama law, but we can use attorneys who are out of the state as well. So I just sent over a contract for one of my clients to sign. The people who wrote it, they were in California, so it is an international interstate law. It's very interesting where, you can meet so many people at once.
I bet you can. It sounds fascinating. Well, as you know, we always talk about things that lawyers do outside the courtroom and outside of the office. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about how, after having those health crises while you were practicing family law and divorce law, how you changed your life and decided to pivot to something that outside of in addition to pivoting your practice, you also pivoted your life. And what are you doing now outside the practice of law that's bringing you joy and making it a lot easier to love on that baby girl that you had through IVF a few years ago?
So, while I was a divorce attorney, I was so stressed all of the time. And while I was in law school, I actually started dancing. I found a dance class that I started taking. And as soon as I started getting a little bit of endorphins, because Elle Woods always says that if you get endorphins, it'll make you happy, and happy people don't kill their husbands. So I live by that. So they also don't have panic attacks when they're litigating. And I started doing dance classes in law school, started getting even better grades because I was happier and less stressed and could focus on what I was doing. And I still, to this day, I mean, we're now looking at, I think I started those in 2007. Yeah. So almost 20 years of dancing with this same group. When I graduated from law school, I went to Huntsville and opened my own studio for a couple of years, and then moved back down here and came back to this studio. So I teach, it's hip hop fitness, and there's a little bit of ballet mixed in because I've been dancing since I was 2 years old. And it is one of the few things that keeps me sane, and it keeps me from hurting people.
Why do you encourage other lawyers to find wellness through activity?
Well, I mean, for one, it gets your mind off of your to-do list for about an hour. It just makes you where you can focus on you, make yourself happier, and it keeps you healthier. I mean, we're already battling one of the most stressful professions that you could possibly have. And when I was going through fertility treatment, I was, I looked at myself and I said, it's stress. A lot of this probably has to do with stress. Like there may be other medical issues going on, but I need to learn how to de-stress. And I remember sitting in church and hearing my pastor talk about she was talking about a Bible verse, be still. And I was thinking to myself, like, how can I learn to be still? As somebody who is type A overachiever, how can I be still? And so I started then getting into yoga and meditating and trying to journal a little bit more and work on my mental health.
And now that you've started journaling and meditating and yoga, how has that affected your day-to-day life?
Well, it does keep me from, it does reduce stress, obviously. It is something that I just find joy in, where I can just have some time to myself. And I just did a CLE the other day for other lawyers about making sure that you reduce your stress by focusing on things that have either gone right in your career that day or gone wrong. If you even just sit for a minute to journal about, what happened that was terrible today? What witness went AWOL? How can I learn from that? Sometimes it just takes some time to just spend some time with yourself and really reflect on how you can improve your life and not get down in the dumps about things that didn't necessarily go exactly how you needed it to go.
Yeah, I was listening to a podcast recently, and one of the suggestions they had was to give yourself a set amount of time at the end of the day, maybe 2 minutes, maybe 5 minutes, to worry about things that you can't control. And if you think about something the rest of the day, say, no, I'm going to worry about that in that 2-minute time frame or that 5-minute time frame at the end of the day. And I think that's a great way to compartmentalize the things that you can't control, like a witness that goes bad. I mean, sometimes you can control that by preparation, but a lot of times they just are a lot better off the stand than they are on the stand. And I'm sure you saw that a good bit yourself.
Yeah, I still remember sometimes having domestic violence victims just disassociate and have this real this affect that was like there was no emotion behind it because they had to disassociate to be able to testify. And like there was no way when we were prepping that I could have seen that when she was in the courtroom later on, because it was all about the extra stress. So sometimes it just takes, sitting down with your thoughts and saying, I had no ability to know ahead of time that this was going to happen. I cannot control other people's state of mind. I cannot control those things. And so I even actually provided little journaling prompts for the CLE that I gave the other day so that other lawyers could focus on how they could look at the good things going on in life.
Yeah, that's a great idea, because if you live a life full of gratitude, it's going to be a lot better life no matter what's actually happening. If you're grateful for the air you breathe and the sun that's shining or the rain that's coming down, you're going to be a lot happier. So on top of having a 5-year-old beautiful little girl and having your own practice there doing fertility law, which very few people do in the state of Alabama or in the Southeast, you've decided to run for political office. What led you to believe that you should become a candidate for the Alabama Supreme Court?
So my law partner of 11 years and I were actually splitting ways. She was joining another firm, and I was taking the bench in the Jefferson County Juvenile Court. I was going to be a referee. A lot of people, don't know what a referee is. So I'll kind of explain that. It's kind of like you make decisions like a federal magistrate would. But it's over, for me, it was dependency cases. So a child is dependent on the state, or delinquency cases, and custody and child support cases. So it was a very, very tough area of the law. And so I would handle those cases in the morning. In the evenings, I would do my fertility law. And so I was watching, all the lawyers come in there. I'd been litigating for years. Now I had this new niche, and I was hearing what I would argue are some of the most sensitive cases that you could possibly hear, where you make decisions and you see immediately that you can either protect a child or destroy a family. And so I was hearing those cases, and it was right after the IVF decision came out. And the IVF decision, that people don't really realize, is that they shut down IVF in the state of Alabama by getting fetal personhood based on a law from 1872. And so because of that, when I had to watch all these people losing their ability to become parents in our state, when I already had to leave the state before they did this to become a parent, I was just flabbergasted how these ideologies were harming families in our state. And then not only that, it shut down my practice. I had CNN calling, I had, MSNBC calling, I had BBC, I had the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times. I had all of these different people calling, because people care about IVF. They care about families. They care about being able to make families. And the statute that they passed, it basically made it so that people no longer have the ability to go after the makers of all of the items that they use in fertility treatment, or the doctors. So families have no recourse now civilly if something happens. And we're one court case away from losing IVF altogether. So, and they're gaslighting us, saying, hey, we fixed it. Everything's fine. But in reality, we almost lost IVF in January of 2025 again, because they sued because the statute was unconstitutional. So because of all of that, I started thinking to myself, I've actually litigated cases for years. I tried my first case within 10 days of passing the bar, and I won it. So I've written, for the Alabama Lawyer twice, not to, be somebody who is like a humble brag or anything, but I was like, I'm sitting here making real life decisions every day. I feel like I need to run, because there's just an echo chamber going on, and we need someone to be a disruptor a little bit, someone to make people think. And I'm not going to say that I'm, going to fill in the shoes of RBG with some crazy, wonderful dissents. But at the same time, we just need someone to provide a different perspective. And so because of that, I thought, you know what, I'm going to do it. And I talked to some people, and they said, you know what, we think you should do it. Because as somebody who documented your IVF journey and watching this IVF case, it was such a big story. But also, con law was my favorite class in law school. So it was one of those things where it was full circle, and it just felt like a calling, and it was the right moment.
Well, I know it is a huge sacrifice for you and your family to run for statewide office. And I think it's always good to have a healthy debate on some of the issues that you brought up. And I know, or I hope that during the election cycle that you'll get a chance to do that with some of the other candidates.
Thank you. Yeah, I look forward to it. I hope so. I'm already making changes. I wrote an op-ed the other day, and one of the justices dissented. And in his dissent, the theme of his dissent was basically the same as my op-ed. And so I'm not saying that we're going to be best friends and we're going to be the Scalia and RBG of the Alabama Supreme Court, but I'm kind of saying it.
Well, actually, at the end of every show, we always ask every lawyer, what does it mean to you to be more than a lawyer?
Well, for me, especially right now, it means personifying the matriarchy. So spending every moment looking after children and looking after other people. So to be more than a lawyer, being a lawyer is helping people, but I want to be able to spend every waking moment to be better and to provide something more to society. And whether it's that I, just praying for my neighbor or making sure they're fed, making sure that I'm leaving the world a better place than it is, making sure that if somebody needs to get a little stress out, they come to my dance class and we get down to Taylor Swift and have a wonderful time. So for me, it is just being the matriarchy, being someone who looks out for other people.
You're certainly doing that every day in your life. You're making a big change in the world. Thank you for all you're doing for Alabama and for people all over the country and the world. And thank you for joining us on More Than a Lawyer.
Well, thank you for having me.
You've been tuning into More Than a Lawyer with your host, attorney Christy Crow. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, www.jinxcrow.com. Thank you for your positive reviews, comments, questions, and for sharing this show with others.